Have you ever felt there's something greater calling you, but you don't know how to respond? Chloe's story will touch your heart. A young woman who left everything behind, her comfortable life, her promising career, to follow a call of faith and change, lives in a faraway place. Come and be inspired by this journey of courage, challenges, and discoveries beyond imagination. Get ready for a story that proves listening to your heart can change the world. Don't miss it, click and watch now. Chloe Harper had a life many would consider ideal. At 26 years old, she lived in a modern apartment in Seattle, Washington, with a stunning view of the city skyline. She worked as a marketing analyst at a tech company that offered enviable benefits, including annual trips and a well-defined career path. Chloe was well-liked by her colleagues and had a loyal group of friends with whom she often spent Friday nights at trendy bars or watching the latest movies. Yet, there was a constant restlessness in her heart, a feeling difficult to describe that followed her like a shadow. She began noticing this emptiness more intensely after a team meeting celebrating the closure of an important deal. Everyone was excited, toasting their success, but Chloe didn't feel the same joy. Her smile was polite, mechanical, and her mind wandered to distant places. Why isn't this enough for me? She often wondered, though she never shared this thought with anyone. There was something unsettling about her routine, a disconnection, as if she were living someone else's life. One night, while returning home from dinner with friends, Chloe took an unplanned detour. She felt a sudden urge to walk through the neighborhood and ended up passing a small red brick church. The interior lights were on, and the sound of voices singing hymns spilled through the slightly open doors. Something about the scene caught her attention. Chloe stopped, hesitant, and finally decided to enter. The atmosphere was welcoming. There were few occupied pews, and the choir sang a gentle melody that seemed to fill the air with a calm and comforting energy. Chloe sat in the back, trying not to draw attention. She wasn't religious and rarely attended church, but at that moment, something felt different. As she watched, a man stepped up to the pulpit and began preaching about the importance of listening to God's calling. Sometimes, God speaks to us in silence, he said, through a restlessness in the heart, a feeling that you were made for something greater. When you feel that, don't ignore it. It's God telling you he has something special for you. Chloe felt a shiver. The pastor's words deeply resonated with her, as if he were speaking directly to her soul. Back at her apartment that night, Chloe couldn't sleep. The words she had heard at church echoed in her mind, provoking questions she had avoided for years. What if there really is a greater purpose for my life? What if this discomfort is a sign that I'm in the wrong place? She spent hours staring out the window, watching the city lights and thinking about everything that defined her career, her independence, her achievements. Yet none of those things seemed to matter in the face of what she was beginning to feel. In the following days, Chloe realized this restlessness wasn't fleeting. It was like a flame refusing to be extinguished. She began recalling moments from her childhood when she dreamed of helping others, inspired by stories of missionaries and volunteers around the world. Over time, those dreams had been swallowed by the expectations of adulthood, but now they returned with force. One afternoon, while reviewing reports at the office, Chloe was surprised by a notification on her phone. It was an email from a childhood friend, Rachel, who had moved to a small community in South Dakota to work as a volunteer. In the email, Rachel described the hardships faced by the local residents and how she felt her work was making a difference. Chloe was intrigued. South Dakota seemed like a completely different world from Seattle, simple, challenging, yet profoundly human. That night, Chloe researched more about the region Rachel mentioned. She discovered a community called Pine Ridge, known for its high poverty rates but also for its rich cultural history and resilient spirit. The images of the landscapes and the smiling children, despite their adversities, moved Chloe in a way she couldn't explain. As she closed her laptop, she felt a wave of emotion that nearly brought her to tears. For the first time in years, Chloe felt that she might be beginning to find answers to the questions that had tormented her for so long. The days following Rachel's email brought Chloe a mix of restlessness and curiosity. What had once been a vague dissatisfaction with her life had transformed into a kind of quest. She continued working, going out with friends, and fulfilling her commitments, but her mind was elsewhere. Pine Ridge, with its vast landscapes and deep challenges, seemed to call out to her in a way she couldn't ignore. One night, as she tried to relax at home, Chloe was overcome by a restless sleep. In her dream, she found herself walking through an unfamiliar village. The houses were modest, some made of weathered wood, and the air was filled with an eerie silence, broken only by the sound of the wind. Suddenly, she saw a group of children gathered around a makeshift fire. They laughed and talked, but there was something in their faces that seemed to carry a story of suffering. Chloe tried to approach them, but before she could reach them, a soft yet firm voice said, "Help the forgotten." She woke up gasping, her heart racing, with the words still echoing in her mind. The dream felt like more than a random nighttime vision. It was like a message. In the days that followed, Chloe couldn't shake the image of the children or the voice she'd heard. Though she tried to ignore it, the dream repeated itself 2 more times that week, each time with greater clarity. On the last occasion, as she woke up, she felt a certainty she had never experienced before. It was as though everything around her finally made sense. She was meant to go to Pine Ridge. Convinced she could no longer ignore the calling, Chloe decided to share her feelings with her best friend, Megan. Sitting in a cozy cafe in downtown Seattle, Chloe recounted her dreams and how she felt they were a sign. Megan listened attentively, but her expression was skeptical. "Chloe, are you sure about this? It sounds so drastic. I mean, leaving everything to go to a place where you don't know anyone? What if this is just a phase?" Megan tried to reason, clearly concerned. "I know it sounds crazy," Chloe replied, holding her coffee cup with trembling hands. "But I've never felt anything this strong before. It's not just a whim, Megan. It's like I finally know what I'm supposed to do with my life." Megan sighed, shaking her head. "I just want you to be happy. But honestly, I think you should think this through more before making such a big decision." Megan's words lingered in Chloe's mind, and she realized she needed more clarity before taking any action. She decided to revisit the church where she had first heard the sermon that had impacted her so deeply. During the service, she sat in the same back pew and prayed silently, asking God for a sign. "If this is really what I'm meant to do, please show me the way," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. In the days that followed, it seemed like everything around her conspired to reinforce her decision. One morning, while walking to work, Chloe passed a mural with the phrase, "Trust in God's plan." It was a simple coincidence, but she felt it was a confirmation. Additionally, she began noticing small details in her routine that she had previously overlooked, moments that seemed to scream that her current life wasn't enough, that something greater awaited her. Finally, Chloe decided to speak with her parents. Sitting in the living room of the house where she had grown up, she explained her idea with all the sincerity she could muster. Her parents, however, reacted with disbelief. "Chloe, this doesn't make sense," her father exclaimed, visibly worried. "You've worked so hard to get where you are. Why would you throw all of that away?" "It's not throwing it away, Dad. It's investing my life in something that truly matters," she replied, trying to stay calm. "And how are you going to support yourself? What are you even going to do there?" "I can't believe you're considering this," her mother added, shaking her head in disapproval. Despite their harsh reactions, Chloe stood her ground. She knew the decision wouldn't be well received by everyone, but she was increasingly certain that she needed to trust her intuition. One afternoon, while reading more about Pine Ridge and the community's history, Chloe felt a deep peace settle over her heart. She knew the journey would be full of challenges, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid, only determined. It was time to start planning her departure. Leaving Seattle was harder than Chloe had imagined. As she packed the boxes of belongings she had decided to store at her parents' house, she felt the weight of every choice that had brought her to this moment. The conversations with Megan, her family, and even herself still echoed in her mind, but there was an inner strength that pushed her to move forward. When the taxi arrived to take her to the airport, Chloe took one last look at the city view she had loved so much, feeling a mix of nostalgia and anticipation. The flight to Rapid City, South Dakota, was smooth, but Chloe spent most of the time staring out the window, trying to imagine what awaited her. Upon landing, she was greeted by Rachel, who was excited to reunite after so many years. Rachel was as warm as Chloe remembered, with her easy smile and contagious energy. "Welcome to the unknown," Rachel joked as she hugged Chloe tightly. The drive from Rapid City to Pine Ridge took several hours, giving Chloe time to absorb the new scenery unfolding before her. The vast plains, dotted with rolling hills, offered a serene beauty that contrasted sharply with Seattle's bustling pace. During the drive, Rachel talked about the community, describing the challenges faced by the local families and the impact the volunteer work had been making. "You're about to meet some amazing people," Rachel said, glancing at Chloe. "But you're also going to face some difficulties. Being here takes more than courage. It takes faith every single day." When they arrived at the village, Chloe felt a mix of shock and awe. The houses were simple, many in need of repair, and the dirt roads had a rustic charm but were marked by time. Children ran barefoot, laughing and playing with the kind of joy Chloe had seen in her dream. She felt a lump in her throat. It was as if everything had been planned just for her. In her first few days, Chloe stayed at the home of a local volunteer, a woman named Sarah. Sarah was an elementary school teacher who had dedicated her life to educating the community's children, despite the school's limited resources. Sarah was pragmatic and kind but had a straightforward tone that Chloe quickly realized was essential for dealing with the day-to-day challenges. "You're going to fall in love with these kids," Sarah said one evening as they ate dinner. "But don't be fooled. This place will test you in ways you can't imagine. It's not easy, but it's worth it." Chloe began working at the local school, helping organize classes and assisting Sarah. At first, the adaptation was challenging. Many of the children struggled with learning difficulties caused by a neglected educational system and tough living conditions. Some were shy and hesitant to approach Chloe, while others were curious but resistant to change. One child who caught Chloe's attention was Jake, a 10-year-old boy with sharp eyes and a serious expression. He rarely spoke, preferring to watch from a distance, but there was something about him that piqued Chloe's curiosity. During a break, she tried to approach him. "Hi Jake, how are you?" Chloe asked with a warm smile. Jake shrugged, avoiding eye contact. Chloe realized she would need patience to earn his trust, but she was determined. As the weeks passed, Chloe began to feel like part of the community. She helped with lessons, participated in local events, and spent evenings listening to stories about the Lakota people's culture and traditions. Each day brought new challenges, from dealing with a lack of school supplies to finding creative ways to teach the children. Despite the hardships, Chloe experienced a deep peace she had never known before. One afternoon, while organizing a small event for the children, Jake finally approached her. He was holding a drawing in his trembling hands and handed it to her without saying a word. Chloe looked at the paper and saw a colorful landscape with mountains, trees, and a bright sky. "It's beautiful, Jake. You're very talented," Chloe said, deeply moved. For the first time, Jake smiled timidly, and Chloe knew she had taken an important step in building a connection with him. As Chloe grew closer to the children and the residents, she also faced moments of doubt. One night, as she wrote in her journal, she poured out her feelings about missing home and the difficulties she encountered. At the same time, every obstacle seemed to strengthen her resolve. One of the most meaningful lessons came from Sarah, who explained that the true impact of their work wasn't immediate. "You might not see the fruits of what you're doing now, Chloe," Sarah said during a conversation at the end of a long day. "But believe me, every small gesture, every smile you offer, leaves a mark that can change a life forever." Those words stayed with Chloe. They helped her keep going, even on the hardest days. Gradually, she realized that Pine Ridge wasn't just a place where she was helping, it was also the place that was helping her grow. Things seemed to be stabilizing for Chloe. She no longer felt the initial discomfort she had upon arriving in Pine Ridge. Instead, the community was starting to feel like home. Her bond with the children, especially with Jake, had grown stronger, and Chloe felt like she was fulfilling her mission. But, as Sarah had warned, Pine Ridge had a way of testing even the most resilient. It was a hot and dry afternoon when disaster struck. Chloe was helping the children organize a mural with their drawings at the school when she heard shouting outside. Confused, she ran to the door and saw thick smoke rising in the distance. A fire had started in one of the nearby homes and was spreading quickly, fueled by strong winds. The village erupted in chaos. Men and women ran with buckets and hoses, desperately trying to contain the flames, while Chloe helped evacuate the children to a safe location. The fire advanced relentlessly, eventually reaching the school before they could stop it. Chloe stood helpless as the flames consumed part of the structure she and Sarah had worked so hard to maintain. When the fire was finally under control, little remained of the school that had served as a beacon of hope for the community. The children, who once laughed and played there, now looked at the ruins with expressions of despair. Chloe felt an overwhelming sense of anguish. Her mind was filled with questions. Why did this happen? How can we move forward now? Am I failing my purpose? That night, as everyone gathered at Sarah's house to discuss the next steps, Chloe remained silent. Words seemed to escape her. What could she possibly say to these people who had lost so much? Sarah, noticing her unease, gently touched her shoulder. "You did everything you could, Chloe," Sarah said in a reassuring tone. "No one could have predicted this. But we need to keep going. These children need you more than ever." Chloe nodded, but the doubt lingered. Later, while she was alone, she decided to pray. Sitting in the small room she shared with another volunteer, she closed her eyes and let the tears flow. "God, I don't know if I can keep going. Please show me what to do." In the silence that followed, Chloe felt an unexpected calm. It wasn't as though all the answers had suddenly appeared, but there was a sense that she wasn't alone. The next morning, she woke up with the renewed determination. She and Sarah began organizing a campaign to rebuild the school. They used social media to spread the word and requested donations. Rachel, with her experience in community organization, helped create an action plan. Although progress was slow, Chloe noticed that the community was beginning to mobilize. Jake, who always observed everything carefully, surprised Chloe by offering his help. He had started drawing ideas for the new school and showed her his sketches with endearing shyness. "We can make it better than before," he said, with a hopeful sparkle in his eyes that deeply moved Chloe. The campaign began to gain traction. Donations came from unexpected places, and volunteers from other towns started arriving to help. The school's reconstruction became a symbol of resilience for Pine Ridge. During one of the meetings to discuss the project, Chloe noticed how the work was bringing the community together. People who had previously known each other only in passing were now working side by side, sharing stories and laughter as they raised walls and painted what would become the new space for the children. On the day they placed the final piece of the roof, Chloe felt a mix of relief and gratitude. The school wasn't just a building. It was a testament to the power of faith and determination. At the inauguration, as the children ran through the newly rebuilt classrooms, Chloe realized that moment was the answer she had been seeking in her prayers. Although challenges still lay ahead, Chloe knew something had changed. Not only in the community but also within herself. The fire that seemed to have destroyed everything had, in fact, planted the seeds for something even greater. The months following the school's reconstruction brought Chloe a new perspective on her journey in Pine Ridge. What once seemed like an insurmountable challenge was now a reminder of the transformative power of faith and unity. The school was once again full of life, with children's laughter and voices echoing through the hallways. The walls were sturdier, the materials more adequate, and most importantly, the energy within the school radiated a renewed sense of hope. Chloe found a new rhythm in her daily life. In the mornings, she helped with classes and coordinated creative activities for the children. In the afternoons, she attended community meetings, working with Sarah and other volunteers to strengthen local infrastructure. Evenings were often spent in quiet reflection, writing in her journal or gazing at the vast South Dakota sky filled with stars. In one of these moments of introspection, Chloe realized just how much she had changed. When she first arrived in Pine Ridge, she carried an idealized vision of helping, as if she had all the answers. Now, she understood that the process of serving was also about learning, growing, and sharing vulnerabilities. Pine Ridge wasn't just a place where she helped others, it was a place that shaped her, day by day, into a stronger, more connected version of herself. Over time, Chloe began to feel that her mission there was nearing its conclusion. The school was running independently, and the community had strengthened in ways she could never have imagined. When she shared her intention to return to Seattle with Sarah, her friend gave her an understanding smile. "You've done so much here, Chloe," Sarah said as they sipped tea on the porch. "But I always knew that one day, you'd feel it was time to move on. That's how it works. The mission doesn't end, but you carry what you've learned into the next chapter of your life." Chloe spent her final weeks in Pine Ridge filled with gratitude. She said her goodbyes to everyone who had touched her life, from the volunteers to the children who had become like family. Jake, in particular, made sure to create a special gift for her, a drawing of Chloe smiling alongside the children in front of the rebuilt school. "So you'll never forget," he said with the seriousness Chloe had grown to admire. Back in Seattle, Chloe found a world that felt both familiar and distant. The traffic, the towering buildings, and the urban routine had lost the allure they once held. But Chloe didn't feel sad. She knew she wasn't returning to the same life she had left behind. She was bringing Pine Ridge with her, in her heart, as a constant reminder of purpose and faith. Reuniting with her family was emotional. Her parents, who had initially questioned her decision, now listened intently as Chloe described everything she had experienced. The challenges, the victories, and the lessons, all of it seemed bigger than any hesitation they might have had. Her mother, moved, said, "We're so proud of you, Chloe. You followed your heart, and that's the most courageous thing anyone can do." Megan, her best friend, was equally impressed by Chloe's transformation. As they caught up over coffee at their usual spot, Megan remarked, "I don't know how to put this, but you seem more whole. Like you found something you were always searching for." Chloe smiled, knowing Megan's words were true. She had found more than a purpose, she had found herself. In the months that followed, Chloe began sharing her story with others, participating in community events and writing articles about her experience. Her message was clear: listening to your heart and following your faith doesn't just transform the lives you touch, it profoundly changes you as well. One day, as she walked along a trail in a nearby park, Chloe looked out at the horizon and felt a peace that needed no explanation. Pine Ridge, with all its pain and beauty, would forever be a part of her. But now, it was time to discover what other callings her heart still held. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to show how it inspired you. Like the video, leave a comment sharing what moved you the most, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Your interaction helps bring stories like Chloe's to more people, spreading faith and hope worldwide. Together, we can make a difference.